There was a few people that were listening online, and they were asking if I can go back to Zoom, because on Zoom it could be interactive. So my technicians don't allow me to go back to Zoom. So I'm not involved, mostly Yossi and others. But what we did do is open it up if somebody's online. If somebody's online, you can comment live, and somebody here is watching it on live and on watching comments if there are any and can speak them out. Okay, we were learning Tzidkas Hatzadik, Ois Samach Beis. I want to say that it's much better to come in person. And one of the reasons, for obvious reasons, one of the reasons is that I just feel such a kesher with everybody who comes in person. So technology just doesn't do it for me. We were learning Ois Samach Beis, and just about finished, but not quite finished. And Chaim, could you bring me the Medrash Rabbah Vayetze? What we learned so far is that throughout history of our avos and the imahos, thank you so much. Throughout the history of our avos and imahos, we inherited different midos. These were probably from the original midos that Hashem put into the world, and then it was tafsa. So we know that Avraham Avinu, for instance, Avraham Avinu was considered the big Baal Chesed, and we inherited a certain amount of Chesed and even the ability to do Mesiras Nefesh, walk into a Kif Shanaish, all the different traumas, as I said, that Avraham Avinu went through, we're able to endure because of Avraham Avinu. Reb Tzadok enumerates that Yosef Hatzadik was called a Chassid, was called a Tzaddik rather, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. David HaMelech was considered called a Chassid, Tafsa, Midas HaChasidus. Like Chassid Ani, aren't I a Chassid? Chassid, we explains why was David HaMelech a Chassid, because a Chassid is also similar to the word Chesed, but it's somebody who was able to overcome their natural boundaries and their natural inclinations. And David HaMelech story started out not so good, but Basof he became a tremendous Baal Tshuva in the Melech Yisrael, and his children will be Mashiach. Levi was called Tahar, Moshe was called Chachma, and we learned that all the different, and on and on and on, but all the different great avos and imois and personalities of Klal Yisrael, each one injected a certain midah into what I called last week the epigenetics, spiritual epigenetics of Klal Yisrael. I think we have it now. We have ability to be tzaddikim. We have ability to be Moser Nefesh. Just look around you and look at the most Mesiras Nefesh for Eretz Yisrael. This is in our blood. This has been here. This is part of who we are and what we are. And it's not just Mesiras Nefesh. It's Chesed that we do, and it's Tahara that we achieve. And Reb Tzadok enumerates on it. I'd like to go a bit further into this. We know that if you go into Rachel and Leah, so we all know that there were great differences between Rachel and Leah. Chazal make the following comment, which is I think a well-known comment. It's in Ayin Aleph, Parak Ayin Aleph, Parshas Vayetze. The comment is repeated a few times in Chazal in different ways, but I'm just going to read this. Here. It says the Medrash Rabbah Vayetze that the big difference between Rachel and Leah is that Leah tafsa pelech haydaya. Leah was mastered haydaya. Where we see that is, we'll get into, but she was the one who was able to admit, able to tell the truth under all circumstances. Leah tafsa pelech haydaya. You know what a pelech is? A spindle. Yeah. So it means to say that was her umnus. That was her. Pelech also can mean like a neighborhood or a district. I think it's all connected with what goes around and around. But Leah mastered haydaya va'amda hemenu, and from her came out balei haydaya, Yehuda. Came out Yehuda, vayakir Yehuda, vayomer tzadka mimeni. Yehuda, of course, made the great admission with Tamar. David was also from there. He said, Hoidu la Hashem kitoi. Daniel Amar lech ela avasim ahodem shabach anan. There's a whole list in Tanakh of plach hoidaya. Of course, the most famous one that we know is Yehuda. Yehuda hoda v'lo bosh. Rachel tafsa pelech shtika. Rachel was she mastered quiet. She mastered shtika. A number of times she didn't talk, but most notably is she replaced herself with Leah and was Shosek. So it was a certain type. There's a certain type. Now, by the way, one is not necessarily, according to my reading in Chazal, one is not necessarily any better than the other. There's the pelech of shtika and the pelech of haydaya. The Balei Drush always say, shtika kahayda. Rachel tafsa pelech shtika v'amdu kol baneo balei mastirin. And her children, the children of Rachel, which was, of course, Yosef and Binyamin, were balei mastirin. Mastirin, I want to point out here, is spelled mem samech tes, yud resh yud nun, which caught my eye. Mastirin should be a lashon of seser, you would think, which is nistar, which is sod, right? But mastirin is, there are even some scholars I saw that say that mastirin, it's just a mistake, it's supposed to be mastirin. That's one answer. But it might be a little bit of a different word, maybe a take on the word, which is, of course, the source of the word mystery.
Not being in the center.
It just doesn't work with the whole, with the hemshich, but just mastirin. Amdu kol banao balei mastirin.
Shalom is, I'm saying he went off to a place to hide.
That's right. Nechba. Rachel tafsa pelech shtika, the Eitz Yosef says here, sheshaska al ramois Lavan. That's his example. That she was quiet about what Lavan did. Came out from her, Bali Mastirim, Binyamin, Yashpei, that was the stone that he had on the Choshen. Yashpei, which really he wasn't, the color wasn't the point, but the word was Yesh Peh, which is Hafuch, no? Yesh Peh. He had a peh. The point is that he had one and didn't use it. There's no. So he says here, Avonai b'choshen hamishpat yoshpeh, lirbois yesh peh. Yoidea b'mchirasai shel Yosef. He knew all about the story of Mechiras Yosef and the fighting that was going on. He knew the whole thing. In all the years he wasn't telling Yaakov about it. Eino magid. So this came from Rachel. Shaul, different one. Vestvar hamelucha loy higid loy. Esther is probably the most important, which is spelled with a tough. So Esther, Eid Esther Magedes, Moiladata Ves Amma, and Alkain Kara Shma Yehuda, and that's why, in fact, Yehuda was called Yehuda. Yehuda was the ben Leah. B'chol Mokim Shenemer Alkain Meruba Boichlasen It was called Yehuda. Yehuda, it was named after the fact that he was Hoda Bosh, that he had this ability to speak up and speak out no matter what the consequences were for him. He said it, Yehuda Hoda Bosh. This is, by the way, connected to what we're going to read in the Torah in a couple of weeks. Vayigash Elav Yehuda. The ability of Yehuda to come forward, it's Yehuda. That's the same ability of being Hoda v'lo Bosh. Yes? Same idea. It's outgoing in that sense.
Is that to say that there can't be someone from Leah who has the other midah, or vice versa? Like Aaron, I'm saying, Vayidam Aaron has a midah of shtika. It sounds like he's from Leah, he's from Leah. So it seems like it's not exclusive. I'm just pointing out.
Yes, it's a good pointing out. But, you have to look at it. I mean, there was obvious mixtures also. Mordechai, Ish Yehudi, Ish Yemini. So part of it was clearly a Yehuda of Mordechai Kara, Laikara v'Leivish Tachava. He had that kind of a chutzpah, a public chutzpah. So this came from Yehuda Hoda v'Leivish. This was the same thing. The Gemara makes a comment that Melech, all the kings come from Yehuda. Yeah. So Melech Paratz Geder. A Melech has to be able to, in order to be a Melech, you need to be able to break through the boundaries, the natural boundaries that are there. By Yigash Elav Yehuda, I would imagine approaching Yosef, not knowing he's your brother, and approaching him in the way he did. By Yigash Elav Mochaba, he was ready to go to Mochaba with Egypt. It wasn't just like a personal discussion that he lost himself. So this was Melech Paratz Geder, and all of the Malchus that's going to come has to be that way. Malchus Yisrael has to be that way. So I want to learn with you this for a moment, because this is all referenced in Reb Tzadok as we go further. In the Shem Shmuel on Alamakom in Vayigash, that he talks about the mahus of Yehuda and the mahus of Yosef, which is so important coming up. The mahus, Leah, Rachel, Yehuda, Yosef. So in other words, we have the next generation, Leah, Rachel, Uski'ilu, Leah was meeting Rachel when Yehuda was meeting Yosef. And the conversation is so yesodistic, not just to understand what happened there in that story, but it's also to understand the midos that have come down to us throughout history. So the Gemara says, just to share with you this for a minute, the Gemara says in Saita, trying to mark him in the morning, in Saita Daf Yud, the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Chama bar Bizna, Amar Rabbi Shimon Chasida, this is Saita Daf Yud, Yosef, Shekidei Shem Shamayim Baseser, where was that? Baseser, meaning like the whole time he was loyal to Hashem and to his father's house, but nobody knew. The part of Yosef, which is probably like the main point of Yosef, is that nobody knew. They didn't recognize him. He was dressed like an Egyptian, talked like an Egyptian. He wouldn't even talk Hebrew with them or whatever it was they were talking. He would Hamelitz Beinoisim. He put an interpreter by. He was in disguise. So in disguise, Yosef was the disguised Jew of Egypt. In disguise is how he saved Bnei Yisrael at that time. So And it was such a good disguise that nobody recognized him. Rashi says he used to have a beard, now he's got a beard. Come on. It's got to be something more than that. The answer is it was so disguised. Why was he so disguised? Because Yosef was the son of Rachel, who was a Seser. Because Rachel, Tafsa Pelach Shtika. And Yosef was a Shosek. He was able to be quiet. So the Gemara says that therefore we find Yosef Kidei Shem Shemayim Baseser. That Yosef was Mekadosh Shem Shemayim in a hidden sort of a way. And therefore, Zacha v'haisifa loi ois achas mishmoi shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore, a letter of Hashem's name, Yud Kei Vav Kei, was added to his name, Tichsiv, as David HaMelech says, Tilim Pei Aleph, Eidus b'hoisef samai. Where did he get the name Yehosef? It was Yosef. So the answer is that David HaMelech knew that we have to add a hey. So what happens with Yosef? He went from Yud Vav Samach Pei to all of a sudden he's Yud Vav Yud Hey. Already have the Shem Hashem, then a Vav. So the only thing he's missing is the final Hey. Yud Kei Vav Kei. He's got 3 out of 4 of the letters of Hashem. So this is Eidus B'Yehosef Samo. Pashat Pshat in the Pasuk, by the way, is the Eidus B'Yehosef Samoi, is that David HaMelech is pointing out is that Hashem is witnessing the fact that he's an Erlich Mensch, he's an Erlich Yid, that he didn't do anything wrong. Nobody knew. He was Mekadosh Shem Shemayim B'Seser.
It's enough that one time. We don't call him Yoshua Abraham. It's just that one time in Tehillim where he pulled back.
That's right. That's what I'm saying. Right, but I just don't want to lose the pshat in the pasuk. God is his witness that he did no chet. Well, maybe he. How do you know? Yeah, he was hidden. He was hidden. So they were calling him Tzafnas Paneach the whole time. Hey, Tzafnas. Rabbi Paneach. That's what? Yosef, we knew his name was Yosef, but anyways, David HaMelech said, Ayin Sham Tilim Pei Aleph, Eidus B'Yehosef Samai, but the significance of adding a hey, so all of a sudden you have Yud Kei Vav, missing the hey. That's got to be something interesting. Yehuda, Shekidei Shem Shemayim B'Farhasi, he was out there. Yehuda was out there. Zacha v'nikra kulay al Shmai Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yehuda is Yud, Hey, Vav, Daled, Hey, so he's got an extra Dalet in there, but he's got the Shem Hashem, so he's missing one, and he has an extra one. Kivin shahoyda v'amar tzotka mimeni yatsa baska v'amar ata yitzalta tamar shnei bonel min ha'or chayecha shani matzo b'schuscha shloisha miponecha min ha'or aninu chananya mishol v'azariah. And the Gemara goes on to talk about this. So what is the pshat in adding a hey to Yosef's name, and what is the pshat that Yehuda already had the Shem Hashem in him because he was Mekadosh Shem Shemayim Barab? Not really true, because Leah gave him that name. He had that name since he was born. So, but let's we could probably work our minds around that one. That was Hashgacha Pratos, but Hamzi Shem Shmuel Sachat Shavah. And he says something. I'm just pulling out Taf Reish Ayin Ches of Vayigash. I'm pulling out of context, which I hope is okay, but I just want to make the point. And he says the following: Ha deloy nikra Yehosef mikara. Why didn't Yaakov just call him Yehosef? Just like Yehuda was called Yehuda. Why wasn't he just called Yehosef? K'may shenikra Yehuda mikara. Yesh leimar, says Hashem Yishmuel, milsa amiktahi. This is a very deep thing. Tehine masha hayu musadim mi'olam zeh l'kiddush Shem Shemayim b'seiser zeh l'kiddush Shem Shemayim farhasi. The fact that they were destined, me'utadim, the fact that they were destined to do kiddush Hashem, each in their own way. This one b'seiser, this one b'farhasi. And I just ask you in the backdrop of your mind to think about all the instances of the Kiddush Hashem that came down throughout history. How many of them were B'Seiser and how many of them were B'Faresia? How many of them there's books written about and Maimori Chazal, like Rabbi Akiva, and how many of them nobody knows. but the Jews, Hashem knows. So hine mashayu musadim me'olam zeh l'kiddushim shemayim b'seiser v'zeh l'kiddushim shemayim v'hesya. Why? What's the deep thing? Ki Yosef haya lo'koyach ne'elam gavoya ma'od, because the whole point of Yosef is that it was hidden. His koach was to be able to hide something. You don't have to raise your hand, but how many people here feel they can keep a secret? Okay, raise. I wouldn't tell you if I was. Some people just have. It's a tremendous amount. I'm in the business of confidentiality. I just remember before I left Eretz Yisrael to go to become a rabbi. So I asked my Rebbe for some tips, and I said to people, if people would come, it was a silly conversation from my side, because you're anticipating this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and none of that ever happens anyway. But like, what if somebody brings you a liver that has a mark on it? Nobody brought me a liver in my life. never happened. The whole thing never happened. But one of the things that did happen, I said, what if somebody tells me something in confidence? So he says, Schweig. So I said, so I shouldn't tell anybody but my wife? He says, talks to your wife. Tell your wife when somebody tells you something in confidence? You got angry at me. No, like, what are you, like, go back into the base medrash. You tell your wife before something, and Kibaltu Yalatzmi, that sometimes to the point of embarrassment for my wife, but I don't tell her anything, and I tell her not to tell me anything. So it's referring to confidence. And if you're not, like, I'll give you a little tip while I'm here, that if you don't talk about people with your wife, there's a tremendous vacuum there. So it forces one to have higher conversations with your wife. I talk to my wife in learning. It's like one has to be, not just in all relationships, but you don't fall to the point where you have the easiest conversation, which is, let's talk about so and so and so and so, and it's always L'Toelis. Always L'Toelis is one of the biggest Yetzer that I've ever seen in my life. This Toelis business. Always Toelis, and how this person doesn't keep their house clean. Maybe we should do something to make their house clean. So it's unbelievable. It's just like unbelievable. But I digress for a reason. So why was Yosef's name not Yehosef? He says the answer is because it was hidden. That's exactly the point. Because it wasn't out there. Because if his name would have been Yehosef, everybody would have known that he has this type of tznius. And the whole idea with Yosef is that he shouldn't know. So he says, Yosef haya koyach nelam gavoa ma'od u'ben Rachel shetavsa pelech shtika. He's a ben Rachel. Alkein kol ma'isa v'taluchaysa haya behester. Everything he did was secret. Behatz neleches with tznius. Nobody saw his open holiness, or his holiness in open. Nobody saw it. Different kind of a tzaddik. Isn't it interesting that he's called the tzaddik? He's called Midas HaYesod, Yosef Hatzadik. The tzaddik, seems from here, is, at least in part, the one that nobody knows. But Adrab, on the contrary, Vayihi Yosef Yefei Toar, Yefei Mara, he had a good disguise. He looked like a movie star. Lahavdil. Pirush Rashi, Shaya Misalso Basara, he would fix his hair all the time. Vaya Misader Belavusha, he stood in front of the mirror fixing everything up. He was always like the perfect guy. There's no tzaddik. Yosef a tzaddik. Yosef was a tzaddik. Kim Zayar Kaddish, V'tafsu B'bigtai. That's what the Zayar tells us. To be sure, Yosef's mind was thinking about the highest Kabbalistic things. He went out of his way to appear and to present as a very simple person, not simple in the political way, but he was, but simple in terms of his Yir Shemayim. he quotes his father, who was the Avnei Nezer, Muvan she Yosef sitnoi shel Oisa East, that Yosef was against Esav. We don't need to go there, but what we see with Yosef is that he was a quiet. By the way, I just want to make it simpler, I just want to explain Al Pi Kabbalah, that you have the Midos, Chesed Gvur Tiferes Netzach Hod Yesod Malchus, the spheres of Hashem. So Yosef was a tzaddik, and he was Midas HaYesod. We say this on Sukkot, by the Ushpizin. A tzaddik is always Midas HaYesod. Tzaddik, Yesod, Ilam. A tzaddik is always Midas HaYesod, and David HaMelech was Malchus, right? So Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach Hod, Yesod, Malchus. Yosef, David. That's how we say the Ushpizin. Everybody with me? Did I lose anybody? So, what's the difference in Yesod and Malchus? The answer is that when you put a seed in the ground, that's called Yesod. Sorry, it's the most hidden thing in the world. You go into your backyard or into a field or wherever you go, and you plant a seed. It's the most hidden thing in the world. But then when it grows, this is called Malchus. Tzemach David Avdecha Mehiras Hatzmiach. That's called Malchus. So you have to have Midas HaYesod before you have Midas HaMalchus. Baruch? Move on. You always have to have Yosef before you have David. Bilachin. We're told by Chazal that before there's a Mashiach ben David, there's a Mashiach ben Yosef. So Mashiach ben David is out there, Ufaratzta. Mashiach ben David is there taking over the world, and stuff. When we talk about this these days, it sounds like we're like reading the news, but it's just startling. But before you have a Mashiach ben David, or a Midah of David, which is Malchus, which is the outgrowth of this Malchus. That's what David HaMelech is, that's what Mashiach is, and David HaMelech took it from Yehuda, yeah? David HaMelech has it from Yehuda, Yehuda has it from Leah, and so we say a Tikkun Leah, if you're up late at night, Tikkun Leah. It all comes down to Mashiach ben David, but before that has to be Mashiach ben Yosef, and who's Mashiach ben Yosef? Nobody knows. Shaul.
Binyamin, but I'm saying Shaul precedes.
Binyamin is the same thing.
And is intertwined with David because his kids.
Yeah, but it's very clear. People always quote Rav Kook, which is true. Rav Kook spoke a lot about Mashiach ben Yosef, or I don't know if he spoke a lot about it, but he was quoted a lot about Mashiach ben Yosef. But even way before Rav Kook, very clear in the Rishonim of Chazal, Sanhedrin, that Mashiach ben Yosef is the one that is in disguise. He's in disguise. Nobody necessarily looks at this Mashiach who's setting up. His job is to set up the Gashmias of Klal Yisrael, the Tashtit, the infrastructure of Klal Yisrael, so that you can have a Mashiach ben David. That's the point of it. So nobody knows, like where's the long white beard? Where's the, not necessarily. I heard from Rav Moshe Shapiro, Olav Shalom, what I heard from him is that Rabbi Akiva thought Bar Kochba was Mashiach. And from here the Rambam learns that, you see, Mashiach doesn't have to be a Rosh Yeshiva. Says the Rambam, Hilchos Malachim. It doesn't have to be the Chafetz Chaim. Rabbi Akiva didn't think he was Mashiach. He thought Bar Kochba was Mashiach. So here's the Gadol Ador Rabbi Akiva, unfathomable Gadol Ador. And he says Bar Kochba was Mashiach. Bar Kochba was a warrior. And on Bar Kochba, he darshaned the pasuk of Dorach Koichav Miyakov, that before Mashiach comes, there will be a shooting star, Dorach Koichav, and that'll be the star of Israel. That'll be the star of the Jewish people. So Rabbi Akiva, I'm not saying a conspiracy theory, I'm saying Rabbi Akiva said Dorach Koichav Miyakov, so he said Bar Kochba. He thought that Bar Kochba was that Mashiach. He was that kochav. At the end, when it ended up to be not Mashiach, and he ended up to be not a good person, as good as anybody thought anyway, so he renamed him Bar Kuziva, because it was Kazav. It wasn't a truth. Okay, so you see, even the Gedolei Ador can make a mistake, or however you want to darshan it. We were in Zelcha, whatever you want to say. He wasn't Mashiach. But the Rambam says from here, you see that Mashiach can be a regular person, because you see the Bar Kochba was a warrior, a general. I guess he wore a yarmulke, but I don't. We don't know that much about Bar Kochba. The historians seem to know a lot about him, but I don't know. I presume he was. He kept the mitzvahs, but it was benister in the sense of it wasn't the Chafetz Chaim, Bar Kochba. Moshe Shapiro said that he thinks that Rabbi Akiva didn't think he was Mashiach ben David. He thinks that he thought he was Mashiach ben Yosef. If that's true, who am I to say? Then it comes out that when the Rambam says that Mashiach could be a regular guy, he means Mashiach ben Yosef, not Mashiach ben David. How hidden can you be? Yeah. Koresh was called Mashiach. That is. The point is this: that what Mashiach ben Yosef, who I'm going to go with the Rambam here, that nobody knows what's going to be until it is. But Mashiach ben Yosef is the hidden one, because he comes from Yosef, and that's Midas HaYesod. In the most simple pshat, he's setting up the Yesod of the Bnei Yisrael and the Geula. It's hard to argue that that's not what we're seeing today.
It doesn't have to be a person.
It could be, yeah. I believe that Rav Kook mentions that possibility, that it can be a movement, it can be a part of history. Whatever it is, it's Midas HaYesod, and it's in the schus of Yosef. Yosef haya b'Mitzrayim. He was in Mitzrayim, like a Rangagruben in Mitzrayim. He dressed like an Egyptian. He wasn't. That's all Midas HaYesod. But what did Yaakov do? He sent Yehuda ahead of the brothers to go set up yeshivas in their go set up a Jewish community over there in Goshen and work. And what we see is why? Because he was the Ben Leah Shahid of Boish, and he was the one who was able to be Paratz Geder, and he was the one to be able to do Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Okay, simple as that. So says the Shem Yishmol, which is so yesodistic. Siki the Gemara in Boyd Cotton, if I could just share with you. Boyd Cotton says that Yehuda Nasi made a takona in his time. That you understand his time. Yehuda Nasi was like 3 generations after Rabbi Akiva, after the Chorban, after everything, and he was in his genius and in his diplomatic ability and his siyata d'shmaya, he sort of restored a relationship with the Romans so that we can live in Eretz Yisrael. So, and he wrote the Mishnah. Yehuda Anasi, by the way, like Yehuda Anasi, he was definitely out there. So we took Torah Shebal Peh, which was a secret, and he put it out there, and nobody had any kesher with the Romans. He was best friends with Antoninos, with the Roman, and almost everything, if you follow Yehuda Hanasi, it's always coming from Yehuda, from Shevet Yehuda. Rabbeinu HaKadosh was always from Shevet Yehuda, but one of the things that he said at his time, which can be explained many ways, is he said that made a takana that nobody should learn Torah in the shuk. Nobody should learn Torah outside in the shuk. So Rashi says, Torah. Like a Torah should be in a bakavadik place. You go into a shul, you go into a beis medrash, you learn Torah. You should learn Torah in the shuk. I don't know the halacha. I just simply don't know the halacha if this takana sort of took for all the generations. But but we've seen variations on the theme that not everything during the time of Roman domain is appropriate to do outside. But the Maral in the Nesivos Olam Beis The Maharal says that the reason Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi said you don't learn Torah in the shuk, that's what he says, you don't learn Torah in the shuk, is because Mishum Tznius HaTorah. And he says that the Tznius HaTorah, Chachma, Tznius HaChachma actually is what he said. Chachma has to be but Tznius. Does anybody, can anybody relate? I think about that a lot. Chachma is but Tznius. It's like Siag L'Chachma Shtika. Sometimes, somehow smart people that have so much to say talk the least.
That's allowed to be Mishana when you set up.
But it's a if he says don't learn Torah b'shuk, so it's like a sort of an anti-Yehuda. It's a Yosef thing. So. To me, the Maharal is mashma. You could look there that he was saying that we're not don't learn Torah b'shuk. We're not holding by Mashiach. We're not holding by David. We're holding by. So today is like a lot of diburim, which is sometimes annoying and sometimes true. Like we're in Gullus and like.
Is there an element there of don't antagonize the Romans?
Yeah. I think that's probably the simplest shot, but we could say something deeper here in that thought itself, that why don't antagonize it? Because we're not holding by Yehuda, which is, Yehuda was a melech. But by the way, Yehuda HaNassi was makbid on the title because he called the Nassis a melech Yisrael. That's what he held, as did his forefathers before him. Nasiim was a new way of Malchus. So with all the Malchus and with putting the Torah Sheba'al out there and doing all the Yehuda things, he also said where we're holding is don't learn Torah b'shuk. So it's just a fascinating steer one to the other.
So to bring it down to this contemporary situation, but
how could you not?
It seems that's exactly what's happened in the last 12 months, so to speak, is that Israel always used to go around. Don't make a noise, Israel, don't rub them up and then you'll get what you want. And after now, it's taking off and saying, you're here and you're not standing up for the shepherd.
Yeah. We grew up with this, I had a very nice shul in Muncie. Good people, well, it's Tzedakah from people, good people. All about them. And it as it is that I am, it bothered me that some of the professionals didn't wear yarmulke to work. There's such a thing, not wearing a yarmulke to work. But I don't know. So I said that so I gave a drasha and I said that what happens you're in a restaurant with a client and you're not wearing a yarmulke and your grandson walks in. And anyways, what's going to happen if you wear a yarmulke? It's we're in the 2018 or whatever it was. What's going to happen if you're 20? What's going to happen if you wear a yarmulke? So almost the whole shul took upon themselves to wear a yarmulke under all circumstances. It's Muncie, New York, Manhattan. Came out the whole shul. Most of them wore yarmulkes, but even they went out to work. I remember the president of the shul, who was a doctor, so he was making his. He started to wear a yarmulke. He was making his rounds in the hospital. He told the story when he was making the announcements. He said he decided to wear a yarmulke when he makes his rounds in the hospital. The hospital is a Good Samaritan hospital, right? So he's making his rounds in the hospital, and he walks into one of the rooms. It's the American medical system. He walks into one of the rooms, and he says to the patient, "Was a doctor here yet?" And the patient said, to the doctor afterwards, he says, "Was the doctor here yet?" So the patient said, "No, but the rabbi was just here." But I'm just saying that the Yehuda and the Yosef, I believe, were on the cusp of travel, the cusp of transition between Yosef and Yehuda. And maybe it's a difference between Golus and Eretz Yisrael, or maybe it's a difference between a year ago and now. Or maybe it's a difference between a week ago and now that things are happening so fast. And for Eretz Yisrael, and the whole world is changing, and the regimes that we thought were never going to go away are going away. So it's like there's something here which is moving, I believe, from Yosef to Yehuda v'ken yehi ratzon. It should happen. Let me get a quick start on the next. On Samach Gimel, which is a continuation. And he says, new Yesod, we get a beginning on this. Habonim doimim la'aim. This is all besides for the omek of Reb Tzadok and Samach Gimel. This will help you find shidduchim for your children. Habonim doimim la'aim. You should know that boys are like their mothers. You agree? That's which part?
There's DNA studies that say that the son carries more DNA of the mother.
There's a lot about looking at the brothers of the
Habonim doimim la'aim k'mashikasav b'psachim. That's what Tzadok thinks, not genetics but Torah. Yisa bas Talmud Chacham. That a person should marry a daughter of a Talmud. A person should marry your children to the daughter of a Talmud Chacham. Why? Because that way, Sheim, V'chulu is very medayik. I think it's a Sheim Meso Gola. If a person marries the daughter of a Talmud Chacham and he either dies or he's Gola, he didn't want to say, or he's Gola, which was like whatever that means, he was kidnapped or something, and he's not present. If the father is not present, you can rely on the daughter of the Talmud Chacham to raise the child properly. So says the Gemara. One of Talmidei Chachamim. So what does it mean you should marry a bas? What if she dies? In other words, she's a bas Talmud Chacham. Let's just analyze it for a second. So she's going to strive for her children to be like her father. That's what we're talking about here. So whereas if it's not a bas Talmud Chacham, be a very chashuv. I just want to add that Shamati that a bas Talmud Chacham doesn't necessarily mean a daughter of a Talmud Chacham. Bas Talmud Chacham could mean like a ben Torah, bas Talmud Chacham. But in this case, he's taking it literally that a bas Talmud Chacham means if you have a certain insurance policy in your children if you married a bas Talmud Chacham, because she's going to want her children to be like her father. V'im hu Talmud Chacham, and if he's a Talmud Chacham, this is always a very frightening. Im hu Talmud Chacham, let's read it like this: just because a person is a Talmud Chacham, ein banav Talmidei Chachamim is not necessarily so that his children are Talmidei Chachamim. The Gemara is more explicit than this. The Gemara says, "Lama, why do we find Lama mitsuyin lo mitsuyin Talmidei Chachamim sheim b'neim shel Talmidei Chachamim?" The Gemara says it the other way around. Why the Gemara Nadarim Pei Aleph, right? Why does it come out that the big table of Talmidei Chachamim are not necessarily the children of Talmidei Chachamim? A lot of times they are. I mean, Chasam Sofer, Kasav Sofer, Chasan Sofer. Look at all the Rebbes and the dynasties in Klal Yisrael, but it's not necessarily so. And you don't get a free ride, no matter what a big Talmud Chacham is, to assume that your son is going to be a Talmud Chacham. So maybe like the Pella is the other way around. How could we even see such a thing? You could be a Talmud Chacham, and your son doesn't do that. So. The Gemara says three reasons. The Gemara says, "Shelo yiskadru ala tzibur, shelo yiskabru ala tzibur," and one of them means he shouldn't be a balgaiva, and become an elitist, like a snob. Torah is in our family. And another shot is that he shouldn't take all the money, in other words, he doesn't want it to be like a Cohen or a Levi, like you're in. So Hashem made a thing, and the third reason is because then you're not going to treat because then you're not going to make the bracha praying for our children. V'sa'aravna Hashem Elokeinu is divrei sarasecha b'finu v'yamcha v'tzatzoenu v'tzatzoenu, because it's like you're in. So the Gemara says it's hashgacha pratis that you have to work, even if you're a Talmud Chacham, you have to work, maybe even harder, that your child should be a Talmud Chacham. So, but what's the reason that he's not a Talmud Chacham? I'll get in trouble for this. Well, maybe he's like his mother. meaning, if you don't marry a Bas Talmud Chacham, so then you don't necessarily have that kind of an influence. We could just say it Pasha without all the fancy genetics, but you don't necessarily have the
What if she's a Bas Talmud Chacham?
Yeah. So I tell you, Balei Tshuva have wonderful, wonderful kids. And I always ask, I think Yotzei Min HaKlal Baruch Hashem, I think the schus of doing tshuva, I think. But I always ask her, what's your schus of? She must have somebody there. That's, always is. But we don't have to become non-frum in order for our children to become good. I'm not suggesting that. I'm only saying that it's not necessarily so. It is necessarily so that a Levi will have the tunas of a Levi and be a Levi. A Kohen will be a Kohen. And probably Sheva Naphtali will be a Naphtali, and God will be a warrior type of a person. So as much as that's discernible, it's probably true. But Torah is not so. Nemar ben ksil tugas imai, b'lo yaviv, v'zeu b'scharim. On the other hand, I just want to read this, and then we'll explain it next week. Aval an nekevos doimos la'av. Nekevos. So what we said until now is your sons will be like your wife, and your daughters will be like you. Dorn, is that what you said your wife said was genetically? It's two different things.
Sons to the mothers.
Sons to the mothers, daughters to the dad. What? He brings that. Shizel Milos Bas Talmud Chacham. That's the pshat in the Bas Talmud Chacham. Mashamar Bedida, Tala Akasa Bascharim B'Nekevus and Nekevus B'Bascharim. Mikol Malkom. Can we just read it through before we end? Mikol Malkom Mitzad Haragilus Habas Eitzel Ima. That's talking about the daughter is like the father, but that's talking about like her kind of a genetic mark or her DNA, or a daughter is like the father. Mikol Malkim Mitzad Haragilos, but there's another thing going on here. So it's like nature and nurture. So there's another thing that's going on here is that Abbas Eitzel Ima. So a woman is often, at least at that time, with her mother, and will tend to react the same way that her mother reacts. Pelech. He doimagam kain li'ima, so therefore you can learn. So what I say, it's good when you're looking for a shidduch for your children, because there's two parts to it. So one of them is if you're looking, let's say you're looking at a chashuv bas Torah, so that chashuv bas Torah will be like her father in certain ways, and like everybody has a mother and a father. Everybody. So, according to Judaism, everybody has a mother and a father. So what are you going to get from the mother and the father? So the daughter, this young woman, will be like the father in certain ways, in tchuna, and then Rav Tzadok is machalik, he says, but in regilus, she'll be like her own mother, because regilus has to do with nurture, not with nature. This is the way we do things. So these are the two words that I want to introduce, and with this I will end. There's hergel and tailada. Eila toldos Yitzchak, right? There's hergel and tailada. Mashamru rechela baser rechela azil. You know what it means? That if you look at a flock of sheep walking with a shepherd, so they will always follow their mother. All the shepselach, which I believe if they're those are a sheep is a female. Yes, a set is a female. What's a male called? A ram.
The ram is the same. It's the ram.
The ram is a zachar. The nekeva is rechela. So rechela basa rechela. They'll always follow like mother duck. They'll always follow the mother. That's what you do because that's their regulars. Just follow your mother. Where's my father? He's out there somewhere. But just follow your mother. And therefore, if you want to check out a shidduch on a certain woman, check out her brother. Why are you checking out her brother? Because her tchuna, because the brother is going to be like the mother. In other words, so you check out the brother who's like the mother. So now you find out if that's what you are, like the mother, because right.